Thanks for tuning in to Healthy Planet One, where we discuss healthy living from experts in each of their fields. This is your host, Patricia Starr.
And your co-host, Kimberly Knock.
Welcome, everyone, to Healthy Planet One. We're excited once again to have Madeleine Kerkhof with us, and part 2 of Loving the Bridges in Making Bridges in Healthcare. So welcome back, Madeleine. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. It's great to be there again.
So we were so thrilled. You shared a lot about your personal story about yourself. And for our listeners, I just want to announce that be sure to listen to part 1 if you haven't heard it, because it's a great application of her experience as not only a former nurse, but as a real professional clinician, if you will, an educator in clinical aromatherapy, and how we can really work with frail patients, elderly, pain management, and life care, utilizing integrated, shall we say, integrated health techniques, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good word. It's a good word.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So let's give a little background for those that are just listening, why integrative nursing is so important to you.
I think it is to provide optimum quality of life, because a person is not only their medical history or their diagnosis. A person is so much more. There's so many influences on health, and we can look at it from so many angles. And we can also take the non-pharmacological route to improve well-being and empower people. And so I feel that also self-reliance is important. There are ways with complementary therapies where we can help them control their own symptoms or side effects, such as an aromatic inhaler for when they're nauseous from chemotherapy, for instance. And then they are in control, where when they are ill, usually control is taken over more or less by healthcare providers and also by family members, very lovingly, of course. But to being in control yourself can really empower people. And so there are so many options that we can choose to provide that for them.
Well, I love the fact that you had said, a person is not just a diagnosis. They're a person. And to start there with the person, and that's certainly what you do.
And who are they? Yeah, who are they? What makes them tick? What makes them smile? Because you're so much more than your sickness. You're also your body and your mind are also sources of pleasant memories or pleasant sensations. And when we address that and respect that and see and hear them really for what makes them tick, then there's no limits to what we can achieve, even if they cannot cure from their disease.
So you work with and you educate people all around the world, Madeleine. Do you educate or teach certain people? Is it across the board? How do you approach them, and who do you see as being called to the type of teaching that you have?
Well, mostly at Co2, it's my institute. We teach nurses, we teach CNAs, we teach any professional healthcare provider in any healthcare setting. That can be an inpatient hospice or a nursing home, the hospital, home care. These. So normally we do not teach patients. We teach the professional.
So that's your focus, pretty much,
That's
right?
my focus. Yes, that's my focus. Yeah, and because I feel that when I still had my own practice, I could only see one patient at a time. And now when I teach the healthcare providers, I can reach so many more patients without even knowing them. And that is brilliant. I love what I do. Because I can reach the patients in the whole world. I recently taught an online course in Japan. We do the Far East. So I'm going to India, COVID permitted, in November to teach in a hospice which I adopted. And so it's wonderful, really.
Speaking of that, what comes to mind, these nurses, the CNA, these healthcare professionals, we had a nurse on one of our last recordings, and we found that they have to take care of themselves too. So do you address that in your
Oh,
teaching?
yeah, I
Can you
do.
say a little
I
bit more
do.
about that?
Well, we give them tools to use the complementary therapies for themselves, but also make them experience how they can take care of their well-being, like relaxation exercises, mind-body techniques. That is all within my scope of practice. I'm not a Reiki provider, although I find it very valuable. That's not what we teach. So we, in our courses, will also address the pain that they can go through when they take care of patients, and how traumatic some processes can be, or how helpless you can feel as a healthcare provider to see that people with dementia are so agitated that it's so difficult to address that. Or especially now in COVID times, I've done a few workshops for Dutch healthcare providers to help empower them to accept and to live with the situation as it is now.
And not take it on and suffer, because one of the things that was spoken about was compassion fatigue as it relates to healthcare.
Yeah, good work.
How do you train in your work with that? Do you address that at all?
I try to well, I'm not a psychologist, so I feel that when people are really burdened, like having a burnout or a more pathological compassion fatigue, I advise them to see a specialist in that. But even by a simple thing like an aromatic foot soak, you can, and with a guided imagery exercise, you can already make it happen that they relax for themselves for a while. So I will offer them some possibly aromatic tools to try out, and make them also see that they're not alone. But to empower them in ways with aromatherapy is my main focus.
So you mentioned something really interesting when we were talking for just a little while ago about COVID, and how even though you can't be there physically, there are ways that you can connect. Do you want to share some of those little tidbits?
Well, I was actually focusing with what I said on like people with dementia. Here in the Netherlands, what we see now is that people in nursing homes, they don't get visitors very much. And I'm doing workshops for healthcare providers who work with people with dementia to make use of scent as an activity. And you could do that in a group activity with a few of the elderly around one table, but you can also do scent activities with the elderly in their individual home or in their individual room. And you can make simple games like a guessing game. Let's say you have this lavender CO2 extract, which is the epitome of a lavender field, scent-wise. And you can offer it to them and see if they recognize it. And if they are not too far in their dementia, or just are elderly and not suffering from dementia, there's a whole story coming if they recognize it. And so it takes their mind off their dark days, it takes their mind off not having visitors, and they will tell you their story about how they loved going to California to see the lavender fields. So it can be very simple. But what I do also is say how you make a foot soak, how can you do a beauty activity. They seem very simple, but they have a large impact on people because we address the senses for them. And those senses are not dead. They may sometimes be limited because they're elderly or they have an illness, but they're not dead. And by touch and by scent and music, and there's so much we can do to help connect to people, even if their loved ones cannot be there. At least we can make a bridge to them.
That's beautiful.
Because I love bridge building in healthcare, as I said. And so we can build bridges to them and address them in a different way to enhance their day.
Very good. So let's talk. I think we could talk forever. I have so many questions that are coming up, but let's talk a little bit about. There are a couple things that you've said. we've talked about essential oils. We know they're flooding the market. We can just touch on that, because I don't want to take away from the focus of what you're teaching, and also you brought up the word extract, so we need to explain that a little bit to our listeners, and then how that's incorporated in your training and what you're going to be training about. Can you handle all that?
Yeah, I can handle that. No
Go
problem.
for it, go.
So aromatherapy is conventionally, we know essential oils, and oils we have from citrus rinds like mandarin and sweet orange. And there are also a type of herbal extracts, which we call CO2 extracts. It's too much to explain it all now,
Right.
but by means of carbon dioxide, we extract volatile molecules from plants, much like conventional essential oils. But these extracts are much richer in fragrance and often richer in some of the components. And what it does, especially when we address the elderly or scent activities or working with CO2s or with aromatherapy as a way to do relaxation or sleep improvement, the better the fragrances are, the more likely it's going to tune into their autobiographical memories. They will have a good feeling about this fragrance. And so that's why I work with CO2 extracts a lot. And they are as mobile or as fluid normally as essential oils are. Mm-hmm. So I'm an expert in that. I have been for the last 10 or 15 years. And I work with them to have this beautiful scent message conveyed to patients. And
you have a book that you wrote about it too, which is awesome.
Yeah, I wrote a book about CO2 extracts. And although I'm Dutch, I wrote it in English because I felt that the world needed to know about these brilliant extracts, which are so wonderful in fragrance, but also in medicinal power. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a book with all referenced on that. And some examples, like I said, are lavender, but also the thyme CO2 extract is like you're rubbing your hands through a thyme bush. It is brilliant. Mm-hmm. And they're so much more mellow in scent. They're not as much in your face as conventional essential oils often can be. Mm-hmm. And so they give you this message, and it's not only for the elderly, it's for everybody who needs some support on a scent level with emotion. And much of what I do is also emotional well-being. Mm-hmm. And I'm very how do I say that? I tried not to use too many essential oils, not too many CO2 extracts. When I do a training, I usually select 10 or 15 of them because, as we said, the world is being flooded with essential oils and not necessarily always very safe. And so I focus to limited quantity of essential oils and CO2 extracts, which have which easier to use safely, which can easily be blended together. So as if you're a starting nurse or a healthcare provider, and you learn about essential oils and CO2s from me, then I make the threshold or the limitations much lower to make it easier for people to start, and all with safety in mind. Yeah. And I feel that essential oils should be used for a purpose and not just because you like them. Although, of course, it's nice to have a nice fragrance in your home, but I'm more into the medicinal part of working with aromatherapy, and I feel that they're so medicinally powerful that by flooding the world with them, I feel we possibly can achieve the counteract. Almost in the end. Yeah.
It's interesting because I've had that experience in my teaching where I've had somebody who's a distributor for a multi-level marketing company, and they've got their whole bag of oils when we haven't even started the class, and and all of a sudden they're pulling it out, and I just simply ask them, do you want to teach the class? Mm-hmm. Because they've already controlled the class by just the power. Like you said, how it hits you in the face. And I think generally speaking, people don't realize that as they get hit. You're talking about